If I know that I'm going to be gone, then it's important for me to invest in the marriage ahead of time, during the good times, during the times where I am with my wife. Let me make an emphasis to invest during that time so that when I'm gone, we have something from which to draw.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Master Level Marriage Podcast, where we discuss all things marriage and where you can discover the tools that you need to have a strong and healthy relationship. Our host, author, and marriage coach, Dr. Ronnie Gaines, will unpack many facets of a marital relationship as he dives into the dynamics of a marriage. In each episode, you will learn what it takes to succeed in your relationship and win in your marriage. Whether you are in the planning stages or have been married for several years, our desire is to help you grow and enrich your life as a couple and become a success story. Subscribe or follow us and be notified of each episode. Please leave us a review and help us help other couples. For more information, visit www.masterlevelmarriage.com. Thanks for checking us out. Now here's your host, Dr. Ronnie Gaines.
Welcome to the Master Level Marriage Podcast. I'm your host, Ronnie Gaines, and I'm so glad that you're here with me on the show today. Again, I want to say thank you for those who are downloading the podcast. We're climbing, and that's great. The more you download, the more it put this show on a level, maybe on a format, and where others can begin to see it, and it pops up. So thank you for the comments. Even those on YouTube that are watching YouTube and subscribing to our YouTube channel, getting some comments from you about how much you love the show and how much you are excited for each show to come out. So thank you. Hopefully we're reaching a lot of people all over the nation and even into other countries. This is exciting that those from India, those from Africa, and the different parts of the world are listening as well. So thank you for being a part of our show. If you will, go down below in the comments and leave some kind of message. Leave a question. Maybe it'll end up in a future show. That would be really unique. Be kind of fun for you to interact with us in something, and then it turn into a show. So come on, leave that comment, and I think that'll be fun. We can interact together. I want to interact with you in some way, and that's the way we do it, is through your comments and through your interaction with the show. Today, I'm going to do part 2 of the trip that I took with Joshua Wagner to India as we flew into the different airports, flying into Ludhiana, Punjab. This was an area where Joshua would do a pastor's conference, a youth conference, and a crusade. 3 nights of crusade of about 15 to 18, could have been close to 20,000 of the Indian people in this crusade. What a great crusade. Had a great time. And on our way, we went through New Delhi, and there was quite a layover. And so we pulled out all the equipment in the little cafeteria area, the eating area at one of the tables, and pulled the equipment out, set it up. Had a lot of looks, a lot of people checking us out, but we did that. In that airport, there's a little bit of background noise, but it's a little different than in the studio, but I think you'll enjoy it. In part 2, Josh begins to talk about him traveling and being gone so long periods of time and many trips away from his young wife. I think Josh said he'd been married for 11 years, but it's a strain on the marriage to be gone a lot, and he's gone, leaving those 4 little children at home and his wife as he goes off in these other countries and travels. But he's developed a plan to take care of them while he's gone, where it feels like that he's just a little ways off, and the kids get to see him each night and talk to him. I think it's going to be a great show for you to hear how he keeps his marriage strong. So without further ado, I would like to take you into the New Delhi airport as I continue this conversation with Joshua Wagner. I'm so grateful that you're here today, and I'm going to jump right in because we're really discussing something today. If you haven't seen or haven't watched or listened to the podcast the last week, we talked about communication. I kind of busted Josh a little bit on maybe his two things that he's dealing with the most being a little bit generic, but communication it's like across the board. We're all dealing with communication problems in our relationship. Go back and listen to that. He also talked about children being some of those things that are part of it, that's a conflict that you have to work through, and you have to be really intentional and make sure that you take care of the relationship that you and Michelle have, and not let the kids, even though they have a lot of, they're high maintenance, you got to do a lot with them. So go back and listen to that podcast. I believe that you'll be encouraged by that. But today I'm posing another question to Josh that I really want you to talk about, because Josh travels a lot. We're right here in India. We're right here in Delhi, India right now, waiting on our flight to head on out to Chandigarh, where we're going to go to a place called Ludhiana, Punjab, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so we're going to be doing some, him and I are going to be doing some stuff there. I'm going to be with him during a pastor's conference, and then at the end of that we'll be doing a marriage conference as well. But I'm here with him, and I thought, this is a great opportunity for some of you to hear from a younger generation that are raising kids, that are dealing with a lot of married things maybe we didn't deal with several years ago. But one of the things he deals with is he's gone a lot. He takes a lot of trips, travels across the world. And I wanted him to kind of speak into your life today and speak into this podcast show about how the dynamics plays out, what he does to maintain a healthy relationship when he's gone. What does he do? What do you do before you leave? What do you take care of while you're home? And what do you take care of when you are out on the road to protect your heart, protect your mind, protect your emotions and things like that? So I want to just open this up. Josh, just go for it and go with it.
Well, thank you for having me again. And my situation is not the same as everybody else's, and I'm not even saying the way that I do it is the only way to do it, but I will share some things today about those times where I am gone. As you mentioned, I travel a lot, and that travel often takes me on the other side of the world. And you may not be in that same situation where you're in full-time ministry, but you do travel occasionally and you're apart from your spouse, and what to do in those seasons. I will say I am really grateful to be away from my wife and children during this age, where I'm still able to text my wife, I'm still able to FaceTime her and my kids, and we're able to communicate in some ways that wouldn't have even been available. When I started traveling as a teenager, I didn't have a phone. I wasn't, if I wanted to send an email to somebody, I have to go to Internet Cafe and do it, but it's not like that anymore, and I'm thankful for that. And that certainly has made things easier. One of the principles that I believe in is called what I call the Joseph principle. In the Old Testament, Joseph was chosen by Pharaoh to deal with impending famine in the land of Egypt. And so he knew by a vision of a dream that there were going to be 7 good years followed by 7 years of famine. And so the plan that Joseph instituted was, we're going to take 20% of all the stuff that comes in during the good years, and we are going to save it so that we have an account from which to draw during those bad years. And I think that principle can be applied in many instances, and certainly with regard to marriage, that if I know that I'm going to be gone, then it's important for me to invest in the marriage ahead of time, during the good times, during the times where I am with my wife. Let me make an emphasis to invest during that time, so that when I'm gone, we have something from which to draw. Good marriages, they do not, the test of a good marriage is not when it's good. The test of a good marriage is what do you do when it's bad. I tell people, anybody can be married on a honeymoon. On a honeymoon, you're eating great, you're having sex all the time. You're on top of the mountain. The test of a good marriage is not what you do on a honeymoon. It's what do you do when you're in the middle of a valley? What do you do when things are tough, when money is scarce, and when tempers are high? And that's the test of a good marriage. And so what we want to do is you don't wait until you get in the midst of that difficult situation and start working on your marriage. Instead, you invest ahead of time, so that when you have to take from that account, you have already invested into that account. So that's one thing that we really try to do.
Yeah, one of the things, Josh, that I tell a lot of couples, and I think I've even said on this show before, is that you need to know why your marriage is good. Sometimes if we don't know why it's good,
Right.
we don't know how to fix it
Yes.
whenever we're having problems. So pay attention.
Yeah.
Be very aware of what you're doing in your relationship that's making it so good.
Yes.
You know, what are you doing daily that you're happy, your conflict seems like it's just resolved so quickly.
That's right.
What is it that looks good?
Yeah, well, and this is such an important thing. You know, I was thinking about, this applies for certainly as a marriage podcast, and I'm going to share some things regarding marriage. I also think it even applies to my kids. You know, I've got 4 young children. How do I stay connected to them even when I'm gone? So, for example, one thing that I'll do is I make videos every day that I'm gone that my wife can show my kids.
Wow.
Now, in a perfect day, I'll still get to FaceTime them and different things. But there's a lot of instances, like, you know, when I'm traveling or whatnot, I may not be able to FaceTime or I may not be able to communicate them, but I still got a unique video each day for them. So, you know, this time what I did is I took 8 of their little Hot Wheels cars and I hid them in different places around the house. And I made a video each day. Hey, here's your clue for today where the Hot Wheels is. And it gives them an activity, and it makes them feel connected to me even while I'm gone. When it comes to my wife, one of the things I try to do is I'll specially plan out ahead of time different moments during the week, 2 weeks, or whatever it is that I'm gone, where I know she's going to feel loved. Have events planned. I'll pay somebody ahead of time. I want you to bring flowers to my wife on this day, you know, or I want you to, you know, come surprise my wife and do this on this day. Or I'll send her a text that I had already pre-planned, you know, hey, there's a gift card. You take the kids out to this restaurant. Here's the prepaid gift card, whatever it is. Those sorts of things can be possible that even when I'm gone, she still feels that love during that season. And yet what I would say at the same time is that the most beneficial thing I do is before and after, I'm carving out specific time, more so even than I am when I'm at home, to invest into her. This night is just me and you. You know, those dates before and after. This year I'll be gone. This will be the 3rd year in a row I'm gone on her birthday. Wow. Okay? And so it's just the way that the schedule has worked. And, you know, I make sure then as a result of that, I say, hey, I'm going to celebrate you twice as hard because I'm gone during that week. And I'm going to celebrate you before, and I'm going to celebrate you after. And she knows then going into that week, she already knows, man, Josh has already invested into me. And when he gets back, he's going to invest into me again. And so she doesn't feel that same level of, I don't know, you know, being alone or that he doesn't care. I've tried to do my best to go above and beyond beforehand and with the intention of afterhand as well, to make sure that she does feel that connectedness.
Yeah, that's so important, because it's not just the birthday.
Yeah.
That we show them that we love them.
That's right.
Or not just the anniversary, not
Yes.
just the Valentine's Day. And it's really doing these things over the year.
Yes.
And I've talked to many couples about this before. They've really bragged about what they do for their significant other, and they'll talk about how a wonderful person they are for doing these things. And I've seen many times, and you mentioned in the last show about love languages, and I've seen many couples doing the right things or doing things, but they weren't doing the right things.
Yeah.
And so I think it's when one thing I would encourage you with, and I'm sure you do this, is to find some things, or even make a list of some of the things that she would view as, if you did this for me, Josh, this would show you that
That's right.
or show me that you love me.
That's right.
And so I've done this with many couples before, where they've made a list of 10 things, and then randomly that person would display those in some way, or whether it's a gift, or whether it was an affirmation, or whatever it was.
Let me give you an example. So this past weekend, knowing I'm going to be out of town, I'd planned a date night, and part of the date night, and this may not sound romantic, but part of the date night was we were going to Home Depot and to Lowe's, and because there were some few projects around the house she's wanting to get done. So I said, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to carve out this time. We're going to go look at these things. And one of the things was, she wanted a new light in the hallway. And so we picked out the light. And the day before I left, 12 hours before I'm getting ready to fly out, one of the last things that I did was I went and installed that new light in the hallway. It's not a huge deal, but it meant a lot to her.
Yeah.
And that I would even take that time the day before I'm leaving to go preach to thousands of people in India. I am taking time to say, hey, I love you. I care about you. You are a priority. Even with all this other stuff, make sure that she knows that she's a priority. And you can communicate that in a variety of ways.
So if you were talking to a young man out there right now, or even a young wife, what would you tell them is one of the most important things to do daily to keep your marriage healthy and strong?
Well, I do think that, and we talked about this even last episode, but, making that open line of communication that she can share with me and I can share with her, as it pertains to the travel part of things, which is really what you're wanting to focus on here. I think that it's very important that before I plan a trip, I'll talk to Michelle and I'll say, hey, this is what's coming up. Are you good with me taking this trip? And this is how long it's going to be. These are the dates I'm going to be gone. And there have been instances where she says, you know what? You've been gone too much. I need you home. And I need to respect that. And you and her both need to sort of figure out what's that time frame, what's that threshold where beyond that it becomes to be too much. It becomes burdensome on your marriage and maybe your children or whatever it may be. And for every person it's different. I'm not saying it has to be the same for everybody. The frequency with which you do it, all of that can change, but it's important that you communicate those things because there have been instances, and I have to recognize more than the ministry in India is the ministry to my wife. Yeah. She is my first ministry, and sometimes in ministry, the spouse can feel overlooked. It can feel like they get your leftovers. I don't mean to sound harsh or vulgar even, but, sometimes a wife can sometimes feel like you're having an affair with your ministry.
Yeah.
And that the ministry
some ways that happens.
Right, and that ministry gets the very best of my husband. It gets him at his, most energetic, and it gets him at his most and then I get the leftovers. He comes home and he's exhausted and he's tired and I don't get, he's been listening to all these other people's problems all day, and now he doesn't want to listen to my problems. And he's been giving to all these other people all day, and now he doesn't want to give to me. Mm-hmm. And we need to make sure that our wife does not feel as though the ministry is our mistress, and that we're going off with them, and then they're getting the leftovers. And so to communicate in such a way where they feel as though they are getting your best.
Yeah, being a pastor, it's the same thing as we're just not gone as much.
Right.
But it's making the church number one instead of your wife. And it's easy to do because we do it for the sake of the Lord, Right. So we say, well, this is ministry. I've got to do this. What good does it do to gain some kind of level of ministry and lose your wife or lose your family in the mix of all that?
That's
so
right.
I've always tried. I know I haven't been perfect at it, and I know I've made some mistakes, but I try to not make the church number one.
Yes.
And I even communicate that to the church, and that's one of the things that we must do as a pastor.
Yeah.
A little bit different than an evangelist that's a missionary going out.
Right.
Is communicate. Not only to your wife, but to your church.
Yes.
To let them know that. And I've even had, on Pastor Appreciation this last week, one of the guys made a comment that the church is not number one. Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing.
That his wife is number one.
Yeah.
That the church is number two. And I think that's something that you just need to communicate to the church, because we would want them making their spouses number one.
Absolutely.
And so why not the pastor as well? And again, it's very easy to do things for the sake of the ministry and call it that.
It is, yeah.
Or even your job. If you're not even in the ministry, but you're just working a regular job, that job should take less priority.
It should, 100%. Or your kids.
Absolutely.
You know,
being present with your kids and your wife.
You know, before we finish today, too, I think that part of this that we need to talk about, too, is, sex, physical nature of it when you are traveling a lot. And some of it goes back to this question about, how you need to find out what is comfortable for you and for your spouse, because there are some relationships where, okay, if they go 2-3 weeks without being intimate, they may be okay. But then there's other relationships where that's not the case, and you really need to find what is okay with you, what is okay with your wife, and don't go beyond that threshold, because what you do not want to do, whether it's ministry or whether it's working in some secular field, you do not want that time apart to be an opportunity for the devil to gain a foothold. And unfortunately, far too many problems have occurred sexually in marriages because when you are apart, you end up giving into temptation. A godly desire for intimacy that's supposed to be with your spouse, but because you're so, frequently gone, or you're so, gone for such a long time, you can't with your spouse, then they end up going somewhere else.
Yeah, I've had many people ask me, well, how many times a week is normal?
Sure.
Well, that's what's normal for you.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's really the way to answer that, and especially if you're going to be gone.
Yeah.
And to guard your heart and your mind while you're on the road.
Yeah.
Because there's so many distractions out in the world, traveling in hotels by yourself, and you just got to guard that.
That's right.
It's real. The Scripture tells us to guard our minds, and I think that's a lot of it. Is temptation's not a bad thing. Jesus was tempted.
Yes.
That's not the problem.
That's not.
The problem is whenever we give into the temptation, and no, I don't think anyone starts out thinking that they're going to have an affair. A lot of times, I think that they put themselves in bad situations.
Of course.
And so and again, even a person who has got a healthy marriage in a bad situation walks away from the situation, even if it's bad.
Yes.
What makes it a situation where I think that people give in sometimes is their marriage is not where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Like you said, the frequency is not where it needs to be, and that frequency is up to you and your wife or your husband. It's not up to someone to determine that. But those intimate times are for you to determine between the two of you. That, again, communication.
Yeah.
Conversation.
Well, and I can only speak of myself, okay? But I will say, for me, my trips are typically anywhere between 7 and 14 days. That's a time frame that me and my wife are comfortable with. If I am gone for a month, that's going to be too long.
That's going to be a problem.
Okay? And when I know, just being real with you, Pastor, so if I know I'm going to be gone, I'm going to plan to have sex with my wife somewhat close to when I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'm just being real.
No, that's
true. Because then I know I'm not going to be with her now for another 10 days. You know what I mean? And it's important that you plan those things out, because I don't want to be separated from her, and now I'm feeling these desires that are God-given desires to be intimate with my wife, but then the devil, if we're not careful, he can, of course, come and he can pervert those. And as you said, people don't just wake up and start having an affair. But over time, they start making concessions. Well, I'm going to start, thinking about another woman because I'm not with my wife. And I'm going to start looking at pornography because I'm not with my wife. And then I'm going to, I'm over. The reality is this, I travel to so many of these places. There's so much anonymity over here. If you wanted to, you could get into trouble over here if you weren't careful. That it's very important that you put up these safeguards, you plan these things ahead of time, and you know where's your limitation, where's her limitation, and you don't go outside of that.
And my wife and I've not traveled all over, so I've not ever been gone a lot, but we have guarded this part of our life. And listen, we're going on 36 years of marriage and 6 years of dating, 41, 42 years. I know we look young, but that's a long time. We've been together, and we have guarded this for years.
Yes,
and
you have to.
And it means so much to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not trying to do this just so I can make people think I'm some kind of special hero to look up to because I'm faithful to my wife. I do this because of her.
Yeah.
I made that vow with her to be
right.
faithful to her, that
That's
there was
right.
going to be no one else in my life, and it doesn't ever even come into my mind.
That's right.
And so I guard that.
Yes, you have to.
So it's in front of us all the time. Men, come on, you're visual people.
Right.
And so just guard that.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, don't ever put yourself in a situation where you have to make a choice.
That's right. That's right. We tell people, make a pre-choice choice.
Right.
That you've already, because, a person who finds themselves in a position where they are in a position of temptation, that is not the time to decide whether or not you're going to be led by your emotions or your feelings or your body. Because when we are put in a position that we've not made a decision about previously, you're always going to be led by your feelings, by your emotions, by your body. But you make a pre-choice choice. I'm not even going to put myself in that situation. If I ever find myself in that situation, I've already determined what I'm going to do. And so you have to plan ahead in that regard. You've got to be wise. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 10, he says, if you think you are standing firm, be careful lest you fall. Mm-hmm. Because, here's written by maybe the most spiritually mature man aside from Jesus who's ever walked planet Earth. And he's like, listen, I'm not at a place where I can just think that I can coast on my Christianity. I need to always be on my guard. I need to daily crucify my flesh. I need to recognize that even if you've been married, 36 years, temptations will still come, and I need to always be on guard.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wrote in my book there was a couple of things about marriage success. What are two things that could kill a successful marriage? And one of those is pride.
Yeah.
And whenever we let pride set in, pride goes before a fall, the Scripture tells us. And so if we get so prideful about our relationship, we might find ourselves in a situation, and I'm proud of our relationship, but I don't have so much pride to think that nothing could kill it.
Exactly.
There is something that could kill it.
Yes.
And I could cause it.
Right.
But so I'm intentional, like you said, it's preconceived.
Yeah. Choices.
Pre-planned
choices. Yeah.
And so that's so good, because that just goes back to what we've talked about in these last two episodes. So today, as we close this out, so Josh, what an incredible 2 weeks of episodes that we've had with you. I'm so glad that you're on here as a guest at some point, and may get Miss and Michelle, and we all four do a podcast together. So, but thank you again for being here on this episode with us today. We've heard from Josh a lot about what to do when you're traveling and when you're gone, and how to protect that. And some of that is planning. Mm-hmm. We plan, we communicate, we have meaningful conversations, and we protect our minds. So I think this is huge when it comes to this sort of thing. So I hope you've enjoyed this show today. If you haven't had a chance, go back and watch last week's, and where Josh talked about the two generic things that we may talk some more about, the two things that causes conflict in this marriage. But listen, today I just want to say thank you. I'm grateful. Go down and leave a review. Leave some kind of comment. Let me know what you think about the shows, and maybe some future shows. But today I'm so grateful that you're here, and I just always want to leave you with this: be your best self, live out your full potential, and experience your best marriage. I'll see you on the next show.